Hi, it's Kevin Sharp, and today I'm joined by artist Shawn Crystal to talk about a page by the great Brian Stelfreeze. Shawn, welcome to Comic Art Live,
Thanks for having me.
and tell us what you chose here and how you came up with this pick out of all the pages that you could consider for the prompt.
It's a good question because my when you asked me, my mind went to some of the most classic comics or some of my favorite like full story comics. But we were just talking about you and I off podcast about my Como trip. Brian was with my crew, and Brian mentored me for a while and taught me a lot. Most most of my storytelling knowledge comes from Brian, and so I Batman Black and White, which this is from Volume One, is to me the most thorough text or academic study of this medium of comic books. Every story is drawn by an absolute master of comic book design and storytelling, and stripping it of color and forcing the artist to use black and white design and shapes. It's just everything's a lesson in there. So I always go to that. So I cracked it open, going to my favorite story in there, which was Kevin Nolan's story. But the book fell open to the Brian Stelfreeze story. And that made me think about what we're doing here, why we're doing it. And so I chose this page because this page alone exemplifies the power of great comic book storytelling. I mean, if we just look at the big splash panel and the panel after it of Batman leaping towards the gun and the panel below of Batman's father being shot, Stelfreeze brilliantly summed up an entire origin story in two panels. By echoing the same body language and same composition, he has given the reader so much information. It's just a beautiful example of comic book storytelling.
Now,
And Brian's also a master of black and white design, so we'll get into that.
when you would you have encountered this story and this series when it was first coming out, Batman Black and
I
White?
did, yeah, yeah. I have the individual um issues somewhere, but the hardcover collection I bought two of them because one is still in shrink wrap. First off, it's one of the most beautiful designed books DC's ever put out. I mean, Chiarello was obviously heavily involved in the design of the book, but it's the greatest collection in the greatest package. So I bought one, and I was in school at the time getting my master's degree in comics, and it became such a source of study for me. I was like, I'm gonna wear this thing out, and I knew they would be gone. And Bud Plant was, I don't even know if Bud Plant's still around, was selling them so inexpensively. I just grabbed another one. I still haven't opened it, but yeah.
So at this time, was this were you reading this pre your Stelfreeze mentorship, or was this after you knew him?
This is around the time this came out before I knew him. I met him shortly after, and in sitting with him and him breaking out his thumbnails in front of me and breaking everything down, every choice he made, I saw this in his thumbnails. I went back and revisited it and was just, I mean, the, like just looking at it now, I can hear Brian talking. The way that shape in the cape frames the gun and leads your eye right to the face of Batman. It's just the power of great design work. So yeah, this came out before I knew Brian, but after I knew Brian, I dove deeper into the study of it.
So as we're talking, the viewers will now be seeing the page as we go, and you've kind of called out the shapes and the storytelling. Could you talk a little about the art technique that you see on the page that you really respond to?
Yeah. So what got me about Brian here was in Brian's comic book language, everything is black or white. There's very little uh, um, allusion to gray. There's very little what I've always called when I taught as optical grays. They're not true grays, but if you think of cross hatching and feathering, they give the illusion of black fading to white. Brian chooses to go pure black, pure white with very little in between. And so it's a study in graphic design, graphic shape, and graphic language, which in studying comics, if you read like Scott McCloud's text, you become very aware that your drawings are a language, much like a typeface is, like in a novel. So I think Brian approaching his comics this way is really quite brilliant. The transition on the bottom, I don't. I'm almost positive. Actually, I can guarantee you that was not in the script. That is Brian's storytelling. To choose to echo back with imagery that way. I would have thought like, how can I do that? But I don't know if I don't know if that's the direction I would have gone in. That's really brilliant what he did.
So, because we're on Comic Art Live, let me put the question to you: do you own any Stelfreeze original art?
I do. I do. I have a few pieces. The first piece I got from Brian was I was graduating from my master's degree program at SCAD, and my wife, knowing I had been spending a lot of time with Brian, and Brian had mentored me, privately emailed Brian and asked if she could buy a piece of art from him to give to me. And Brian so generously wrote her back and said, "Absolutely, but I will not take your money. Consider this as a return in your investment on Sean," which was just about the sweetest thing ever. So that was a watercolor he did of an ex girlfriend, like a portrait. It was two portraits, a profile and a three-quarter view. So that's hanging in my kitchen still. And when the most recent Spider Art of Spider Verse book came out, Brian did a lot of work on that movie concept wise. And my kids are freaking out. I got them each a copy because the movie just affected them so dramatically in their own art. And so I bought them downstairs, cracked open the book, and put it underneath Brian's painting, and they were like, "What?" So I have that. And then when we were in Como, I fell asleep in the car ride from Parma to Como. I didn't know my art dealer Jason took a picture of me, sent it to Brian. So Brian did a cartoon drawing of me sleeping. That's so fucking beautiful. He gave it to me. So I have that. And then I have a few thumbnails he's given me over the years. And yeah, I've got some Brian stuff.
But not this page, correct?
No, no, dude. I don't know who owns this Batman black and white stuff. These are gold bars.
Yeah. Well, now the word's out. If anybody watching this has a lead on this page, you know who's interested. Sean, thank you so much for joining us and talking through this beautiful piece of work.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.